What if I told you that a single sentence can silence your inner voice, dismantle your justifications, and reveal who you really are? Carl Jung left that sentence, and today you're going to use it to disarm your ego in minutes. No more being a puppet of your emotions. No more blowing up for any provocation. Enough of living as a slave to your own inflated ego. Carl Jung discovered the most devastating phrase in psychology, a sentence that destroys any self-deception, any pathetic justification, any unnecessary drama. This phrase will leave you naked before the truth about who you really are. While you stand there offended, reacting, fighting with the world, intelligent people use this psychological weapon to maintain total control over their emotions. They know the secret that you haven't discovered yet. They know how to disarm the ego in seconds and find real power. It's not coach talk. It's not cheap self-help. It's brutal science applied to your life. Today you will stop being a victim and become responsible. You will stop blaming others and start investigating yourself. You will discover the only phrase that transforms any irritation into deep self-knowledge. Get ready for the most necessary punch in the face of your life. 1. The secret phrase. Here it is, the phrase that will change your life forever. Everything that irritates me in the other is a projection of what I don't accept in myself. Carl Jung wasn't kidding when he created this psychological bomb. This sentence is a grenade that blows up all your mental defenses, all your cheap justifications, all your comfortable self-deceptions. Most people read this sentence and think they understand. Fatal mistake. You haven't understood anything yet. This is not a phrase to memorize or share on Instagram. It's a surgical tool to dissect your soul and find the brutal truth about who you really are. When Jung developed this idea, he was investigating the deepest mechanisms of the human mind. He discovered that our irritation with others is always a reflection of something we reject in ourselves. Think about the last time someone annoyed you deeply. That arrogant person at work, that noisy neighbor, that family member who always criticizes everything. Their irritation is not about them. It never was. It's about you. It's about a part of yourself that you don't want to see, you don't want to accept, you don't want to acknowledge. Jung called this projection, and it is the ego's most powerful mechanism for keeping you in ignorance about yourself. The ego is a master at creating external enemies. He needs someone to blame, someone to hate, someone to hold accountable for his suffering. Because if you stop blaming others, you're going to have to look within, and looking inside hurts. Looking inward breaks the illusion that you are an innocent victim of circumstance. Looking within reveals that you are the creator of your own emotional experience. This phrase of Jung's is revolutionary because it completely reverses the game. Instead of pointing your finger at the world, you turn your finger at yourself. Instead of looking for faults in others, you start investigating your own faults. Instead of waiting for the world to change for you to be happy, you take responsibility for your own happiness. But be careful. This phrase is not for the faint-hearted. It is not for those who want to continue living in the comfort zone of excuses and justifications. This phrase is for psychological warriors. For people who have the courage to face the truth about themselves, no matter how painful it may be. Because only those who have the courage to see their own defects can correct them. Only those who have the courage to recognize their own shadows can integrate them and become a complete person. 2. Your greatest enemy. Your biggest enemy is not out there. It's not your boss, it's not your ex, it's not your family, it's not society. Your greatest enemy is within you, and it has a name. Ego. The ego is the most sophisticated internal saboteur there is. He works 24 hours a day to keep you small, reactive, dependent on external approval, and completely unaware of your own destructive patterns. Carl Jung spent decades studying this inner force that dominates us without us realizing it. The ego is not just inflated self-esteem or arrogance. The ego is a complex system of psychological defenses that was created to protect you, but which ended up becoming your prison. He works as an in-house advocate who always finds a justification for his behaviors. Always finds someone to blame for his problems. Always finds an excuse for you not to take responsibility for your life. The ego is deathly afraid of one thing: the truth. The truth about who you really are, about your flaws, about your limitations, about your responsibilities. Then it creates an edited version of yourself. A version where you are always the victim, where you are always right, where your problems are always the fault of others. This edited version is comfortable, but it's a lie. And to live a lie is to live in suffering. When someone you off, your ego immediately kicks in. He begins to catalog all the other person's defects. He begins to build a mental case about why you're right and the other person is wrong. He begins to feed his anger, his indignation, his sense of moral superiority. All this to prevent you from asking the only question that really matters: what is this irritation revealing about me? The ego hates this question because this question breaks the game. This question forces you to stop being a victim and start being responsible. This question forces you to investigate your own patterns, your own wounds, your own limitations. And the ego would rather die than admit that you have limitations. Jung discovered that the ego works through defense mechanisms. Projection is one of them. When you design, you take a characteristic of yours that you don't accept and throw it at the other person. Then you can attack this characteristic in the other without having to recognize that it exists in you. It's genius and pathetic at the same time. Do arrogant people annoy you? Investigate your own arrogance. Do lying people make you mad? Look at your own lies. Do controlling people drive you crazy? Examine your own control. The pattern's always the same. What bothers you most about the other is exactly what you reject most about yourself. 3. The brutal test. Now comes the part that separates the brave from the cowardly. You already know Jung's phrase, you already understand that your ego is your biggest enemy. But knowledge without application is mental masturbation. The time has come for the brutal test. The time has come for you to take this phrase and use it in real life, in the heat of the moment, when your irritation is boiling and your ego is screaming for revenge. The test works like this. The next time someone annoys you, you'll stop everything you're doing and ask yourself a simple question. What is this person mirroring in me that I don't want to see? Sounds easy? Right. Your ego will fight this question with all its might. He will bombard you with 1,000 justifications about why the other person is terrible and you are innocent. It will show you all the evidence of why you are right to be angry. Ignore all of this. This is the voice of your inner saboteur trying to keep you in ignorance. Jung knew that the moment of irritation is the most precious moment for self-knowledge. It is when your defenses are down, when your unconscious patterns are exposed, when you can clearly see the mechanisms that normally operate in the shadows of your mind. Let's do a practical exercise. Think of someone who annoys you deeply. It can be a specific person or a type of person. Now list 3 characteristics of this person that bother you the most. Wrote? Very good. Now comes the painful part. These 3 characteristics exist in you too. They may be disguised, repressed, denied, but they are there. If you get angry with arrogant people, it's because there's arrogance in you that you don't accept. Perhaps you are arrogant in a subtle, intellectual way disguised as humility. If you get angry with lying people, it's because there's dishonesty in you that you don't want to acknowledge. Maybe you lie to yourself, maybe you omit truths, maybe you live a life that is not authentic. The brutal test doesn't stop there. Once you've identified these traits in you, you need to do something even harder. Accept that they're part of you. Do not justify, do not minimize, do not compare. Simply accept. Yes, I also have arrogance. Yes, I'm also dishonest sometimes. Yes, I'm also controlling. This acceptance is not resignation, it is liberation. When you stop denying your dark traits and start accepting them, something magical happens. They lose power over you. You stop being controlled by them unconsciously and begin to have conscious choice about how to express them. You stop projecting them onto others and start integrating them into yourself. You stop being a victim of your own patterns and become a master of them. 4. Broken mirror. Your whole life is a broken mirror. Every person who crosses your path, every situation that irritates you, every conflict you face is a fragment of that mirror, reflecting parts of you that you don't want to see. Jung called this projection, but I'll explain it to you in a way that will make you really understand what's going on in your mind. Projection is when you take a rejected part of yourself and throw it at the other person. It's like you have an internal cinema where you're always the hero and the others are always the villains. But here's the brutal truth. The villains in your cinema are always distorted versions of aspects of yourself that you can't accept. Every person who you off as an actor representing a part of you that you've banished into the shadows of your consciousness. Think about your ex who you consider manipulative. Was she really manipulative, or are you projecting your own manipulation onto her? Think about your boss who you think is authoritarian. Is he really authoritarian, or are you seeing in him your own pent-up need for control? Think of that friend you consider fake. Is it really fake, or are you projecting your own falsehood onto it? Projection works because it's easier to attack a defect in the other than it is to recognize that defect in yourself. It's more comfortable to point your finger than to look in the mirror. It is safer to be a victim than to be responsible. But this security is an illusion. This security keeps you stuck in destructive patterns that you repeat without realizing it. Jung discovered that we can only see in others what exists in us. If you didn't have arrogance, you wouldn't be able to identify arrogance in others. If you didn't have falsehood, you wouldn't be able to detect falsehood in others. If you didn't have manipulation, you wouldn't be able to perceive manipulation in others. Your ability to see faults in others is proportional to your ability to deny those same faults in yourself. The broken projection mirror has an evolutionary function. It forces you to confront aspects of yourself that you would normally avoid. Each irritation is an invitation to self-knowledge. Every conflict is an opportunity for integration. Each person who bothers you is an undercover teacher showing you something about yourself that you need to learn. But most people squander these opportunities. Instead of using irritation as a tool for self-knowledge, they use it as fuel for drama. Instead of investigating what the projection is revealing, they get lost in the narrative of victimization. Instead of integrating their shadows, they continue to project them onto others. When you understand that your irritation is always about you, everything changes. You stop trying to change others and start changing yourself. You stop expecting the world to adapt to you and start adapting to the world. You stop being hostage to your projections and become the master of your emotional experience. 5. Lies exposed. Your ego is the biggest liar you've ever met. He is more convincing than any politician, more persuasive than any salesman, more manipulative than any narcissist. And the worst part? You believe every lie he tells. You don't just believe, you defend these lies as if your life depended on them. Because for the ego, your life really depends on them. The first lie your ego tells you is that you are special, that you are different, that the rules that apply to others do not apply to you. When you get angry with someone who is arrogant, your ego whispers, "You're not arrogant like that person. Your confidence is justified, hers is not." When you get angry with someone selfish, your ego mutters, "You're not selfish like that person. You're just taking care of yourself. She's being greedy." The second lie is that your emotions are always justified, that your anger is always legitimate, that your irritation is always an appropriate response to the behavior of others. Your ego never admits that you may be overreacting, that you may be misinterpreting, that you may be projecting. To the ego, you are always the innocent victim of terrible people who don't know how to behave. The third lie is that you know the intentions of others, that you can read minds, that you know exactly why people do what they do. When someone cuts you off in traffic, your ego immediately creates a narrative. This person is selfish and doesn't respect anyone. When someone doesn't respond to your message quickly, your ego makes up a story. This person is purposely ignoring me. The fourth lie is that you have no choice about how to react, that their reactions are automatic and inevitable, that you have to get annoyed when certain things happen, that you can't help but feel offended when certain words are said. Your ego convinces you that you are a victim of your own emotions when in fact you are the creator of them. Jung knew that these ego lies serve one purpose, to protect you from responsibility. Because if you admit that you are not special, that your emotions are not always justified, that you do not know the intentions of others, that you have a choice about how to react, then you have to take responsibility for your life experience. And that scares the ego. The fifth lie is the most dangerous of all, that you already know yourself, that you know who you are, what your flaws are, what your limitations are. Your ego convinces you that you've done all the necessary self-knowledge work, that you are already conscious enough, that you've evolved enough. This lie keeps you stagnant, prevents you from growing, traps you in patterns you don't even realize you have. When you start questioning these lies, when you start investigating your own projections, when you start taking responsibility for your emotional reactions, the ego panics. He will intensify the lies. He will bombard you with justifications. He'll try to convince you that you're being to yourself, that you're overreacting, that you should go back to the comfort zone of excuses and external blame. 6. Reaction versus response. There is a brutal difference between reacting and responding. A difference that separates conscious people from unconscious people. A difference that determines whether you will live as a slave to your emotions or as a master of them. Jung understood this difference and used it to transform not only his own life, but the lives of thousands of patients who passed through his office. Reacting is automatic. It is unconscious. It's primitive. When you react, you are being controlled by your basest instincts, by your oldest patterns, by your deepest fears. You don't choose to react. The reaction just happens. Someone teases you and you explode. Someone criticizes you and you defend yourself. Someone ignores you and you are offended. You are like a robot programmed to always respond in the same way to the same stimuli. Responding is conscious. It's intentional. It is evolved. When you answer, you are using your intelligence, your wisdom, your ability to choose. You stop, observe, analyze, and then decide what is the best way to act. You are not controlled by the situation. You control your response to the situation. You are like a master who consciously chooses every move in the game of life. Jung's phrase gives you the power to turn reaction into response. When someone annoys you and you automatically feel the anger rising, you have a choice. You can react as you always have, explode, blame, attack. Or you can stop and ask, what is this irritation showing me about myself? This question breaks the automatic pattern of reaction and makes room for a conscious response. People who react live in survival mode. They're always on the defensive, always ready to attack, always waiting for the next problem. They spend a lot of energy reacting to things that shouldn't even matter. They live as if they were in a constant war against the world. And in this war, they always lose because they are fighting against enemies that they themselves created through their projections. People who respond live in growth mode. They use every situation as an opportunity to learn something about themselves. They transform every irritation into self-knowledge. They convert every conflict into wisdom. They don't spend energy fighting the world. They use energy to understand themselves and evolve. The practical difference is gigantic. When you react, you strengthen the patterns that keep you stuck. When you respond, you break those patterns and create new ones. When you react, you become predictable. When you respond, you become free. When you react, you are controlled by circumstances. When you respond, you control your experience of the conditions. Jung discovered that the ability to respond rather than react is what differentiates mature people from immature people. Mature people are not those who never feel irritation. They are the ones who feel the irritation and consciously choose how to deal with it. They use irritation as information, not as fuel for drama. The secret lies in the space between the stimulus and the response. In this space is your freedom. In that space lies your power. In that space is your humanity. When you learn to inhabit that space, you stop being an animal reacting by instinct and become a human being responding by choice. 7. Silent power. True power does not scream. It is not shown. You don't need to prove anything to anyone. True power is silent. It's internal. It is unshakable. Jung discovered that when you stop projecting your shadows onto others and start integrating them into yourself, you develop a kind of strength that no one can take away from you. A force that does not depend on external approval, that is not shaken by criticism, that does not allow itself to be manipulated by provocations. Weak people make noise. They scream, threaten, get excited, make drama. They need everyone to know how angry they are, how much they have been offended, how much they are victims of circumstances. They turn every conflict into a public spectacle because their identity depends on external validation. They are like deflated balloons that need to be constantly inflated by others. Powerful people are silent. They don't need to announce their strength because it's obvious. They don't have to defend themselves because they don't feel attacked. They don't need to prove that they're right because they don't depend on the opinions of others to feel good about themselves. They are like mountains, solid, stable, unshakable. When you apply Jung's phrase in your life, when you stop blaming others and start investigating yourself, you develop this silent power. You stop being reactive and become responsive. You stop being a victim and become a creator. You stop being dependent and become autonomous. You stop seeking power over others and find power over yourself. Self-knowledge is the source of this power. When you know your own shadows, when you accept your own faults, when you integrate your own contradictions, you become complete. And a complete person cannot be manipulated, cannot be provoked, cannot be controlled, because it has no blind spots that others can exploit. Jung called this process individuation. It's the process of becoming who you really are, not who others want you to be. Not who you think you should be, but who you authentically are. This process is painful because it requires you to let go of comfortable illusions about yourself. But it's liberating because it gives you access to your true power. People who don't know each other are icily manipulated. Just push the right buttons and they explode. Just use the right words and they get offended. Just make the right gestures and they lose control. They are like puppets in the hands of anyone who understands their emotional triggers. People who know each other are unperturbed. They know exactly what their weaknesses are, so they're not surprised when someone tries to exploit them. They know exactly what their standards are, so they can consciously choose when to follow them and when to break them. They know exactly who they are, so they don't need external validation to feel safe. Silent power is not passivity. It is not resignation. It is not weakness disguised as spirituality. It is conscious force. It is a deliberate choice. It's total control over your own emotional reactions. When you have this power, you can choose when to engage and when to withdraw, when to speak and when to shut up, when to act and when to observe. This power scares weak people. They can't understand how you can stay calm in situations that would make them hysterical. They can't understand how you can not be offended by provocations that would make them angry. They try to provoke you, manipulate you, control you, but nothing works, and this makes them even more desperate. 8. Real cases. Let me tell you 3 real stories that will show how Jung's phrase works in practice. 3 cases of people who have used this tool to completely transform their lives. 3 examples of how to stop blaming others and start investigating yourself can change everything. Case 1. Marina, 35 years old, executive. She was always complaining about her authoritarian boss. According to her, he was controlling, micromanaged everything, didn't trust the team. Marina spent hours venting to friends about how terrible her boss was, until someone introduced Jung's phrase to her. Everything that irritates me in the other is a projection of what I don't accept in myself. Marina resisted at first. I'm not controlling like him, she said, but he began to observe. He realized that he obsessively controlled his children's schedule. She realized that she was micromanaging the maid. She realized that she didn't trust her husband to do things her way. Marina was as controlling as her boss, but she had never admitted it to herself. When she accepted her own need for control, something magical happened. She stopped getting angry with her boss. He stopped taking his attitudes personally. He began to understand that he also had his insecurities, his fears, his needs. Marina learned to work with his style instead of fighting against it, and surprisingly, the relationship has improved. Case 2. Roberto, 42 years old, divorced. He hated his ex-wife. According to him, she was manipulative, a liar, a gold digger. Roberto spent enormous energy talking bad about her to anyone who would listen, until a friend challenged him with Jung's phrase. If she annoys you so much, what does that say about you? Roberto was outraged. I'm not manipulative like her, he protested, but he began to investigate. She realized that she manipulated her children to be on her side. He realized that he was lying to himself about his own responsibility at the end of the marriage. He realized that he also had financial interests in the separation. Roberto was as manipulative as his ex, but he had created a narrative where he was the innocent victim. When he took on his own manipulation, the anger subsided. He stopped demonizing his ex-wife and began to see that they had both contributed to the problems in their relationship. Roberto managed to establish a civilized relationship with her, which mainly benefited the children. He stopped being a victim of the situation and became responsible for improving it. Case 3. Aina, 28 years old, designer. She was deeply angry with false people. According to her, the world was full of hypocritical people who pretended to be what they were not. Anna prided herself on being authentic, on always speaking the truth, on not wearing social masks, until he applied Jung's phrase in his own life. Anna discovered that she also wore masks, that he pretended to be well when he was bad, who lied about his feelings to avoid conflicts, who featured an edited version of herself on social media. Anna was as false as the people she criticized, but her falsehood was more subtle, more socially accepted. When she accepted her own falsehood, she stopped judging others so much. He began to understand that everyone wears masks sometimes, that everyone has aspects that they prefer to hide. Anna developed more compassion for others and paradoxically became more authentic with herself. 9. Hidden traps. Now that you know Jung's phrase and understand how it works, your ego will go into survival mode. He will use all the weapons in the arsenal to prevent you from applying this tool in your life. It will create sophisticated traps, subtle resistances, internal sabotage that you won't even realize are happening. Get ready, because the war against self-knowledge is just beginning. The first trap is intellectualization. Your ego will convince you that understanding the theory is enough, that knowing about projection already makes you a conscious person, that knowing Jung's phrase already puts you on a higher level of evolution. This is one of the most dangerous traps because it gives you the illusion of progress without any real change. You become an expert in Jungian psychology, but you continue to react to others in the same way as always. The second trap is selectivity. Your ego will allow you to apply Jung's phrase only in safe situations, with people who don't matter much in minor conflicts. But when the time comes to apply it with important people, in situations that really move you, in conflicts that touch your deepest wounds, your ego will find 1,000 excuses not to use the tool. This time is different, he will whisper. This time you really are the victim. The third trap is spiritualization. Your ego will transform self-knowledge into another way to feel superior to others. You will start to look for people who still blame others and feel evolved. He will begin to judge those who have not yet discovered his projections. You'll use inner work as a new form of ego, a narcissistic spirituality that keeps you separate from others instead of connecting you with them. The fourth trap is reverse victimization. When you start investigating your own shadows, your ego can take you to the opposite extreme. Instead of always blaming others, you'll start blaming yourself all the time. Instead of never taking responsibility, you will take responsibility for everything, even for things that are not yours. This is a subtle way to keep the drama going, only now you're the villain of the story instead of the victim. The fifth trap is perfectibility. Your ego will convince you that the goal is to completely eliminate your shadows, become a perfect person, never get angry with anyone again. When you realize that this is impossible, when you continue to have normal human reactions, your ego will use it as evidence that the work doesn't work, that you are a failure, that you should give up. The sixth trap is haste. Your ego will want immediate results. It will want you to transform overnight. When you realize that self-knowledge is a long, gradual, sometimes painful process, your ego will convince you that you are wasting time, that you should look for faster, easier, more comfortable solutions. Jung knew that these resistances would appear. He knew that the ego would not give up control easily. That is why he always emphasized that the work of individuation is for life. It's not a course you take and that's it. It is a daily practice, a constant vigilance, a permanent commitment to the truth about oneself. The key to avoiding these pitfalls is humility. Recognize that you will always have blind spots, that there will always be aspects of yourself that you haven't seen yet, that there will always be patterns that you haven't broken yet. This humility keeps you open to learning, protects you from spiritual arrogance, allows you to continue growing even when you think you already know everything. 10. Total freedom. Here's the truth that no one tells you. Total freedom's not being able to do what you want. Total freedom is not being controlled by what you don't want. It is not being held hostage to your emotional reactions. It is not being manipulated by the triggers that others press on you. It is not being a prisoner of your own unconscious patterns. Jung discovered that the only real freedom is inner freedom. When you master the phrase, "Everything that irritates me in the other is a projection of what I don't accept in myself," you conquer this freedom. You stop being a victim of circumstances and become the creator of your experience. You stop reacting automatically and start responding consciously. You stop blaming the world for your problems and take full responsibility for your emotional life. This freedom scares most people, because freedom comes with responsibility. When you can no longer blame others for your feelings, you have to assume that you are the one who creates those feelings. When you can no longer play the victim of circumstances, you have to recognize that it is you who chooses how to react to circumstances. When you can no longer project your shadows onto others, you have to integrate those shadows into yourself. But this responsibility is liberating, because if you are responsible for your problems, you also have the power to solve them. If you create your feelings, you can change them. If you choose your reactions, you can choose different reactions. If you cast your shadows, you can stop projecting and start integrating. Total freedom means that no one else can control you emotionally. Your boss may yell, but you don't have to alter yourself. Your ex may try to tease you, but you don't have to take the bait. Your family may try to manipulate you, but you don't have to join the game. You become immune to manipulation because you know your own triggers and consciously choose when to activate them. Total freedom means you stop wasting energy on unnecessary drama. Instead of spending hours complaining about people who annoy you, you use that energy to grow. Instead of dwelling on conflicts, you turn conflicts into self-knowledge. Instead of fighting the world, you work on yourself. Total freedom means that you develop an unshakable inner peace. Not a passive peace, but an active peace. A peace that comes from the deep knowing of who you are, including the shadow parts of you. A peace that comes from total acceptance of oneself, defects included. A peace that no one can take away from you because it does not depend on external circumstances. Jung knew that this freedom is not for everyone. Most people prefer the comfortable prison of excuses and external blame. He prefers to be a victim than to be responsible. He prefers to react rather than respond. It prefers to design rather than integrate, because freedom requires courage. Courage to see the truth about yourself. Courage to take full responsibility for your life. Courage to abandon the identity of victim and embrace identity of creator. But if you've come this far, if you've read all of this and are still interested in applying Jung's phrase in your life, you have that courage. You are ready for total freedom. You are ready to stop being controlled by others and start controlling yourself. You are ready to transform every irritation into self-knowledge, every conflict into growth, every projection into integration. The journey will not be easy. Your ego will resist. Your old patterns will try to reassert themselves. You're going to have moments of doubt, moments of relapse, times when you'll want to go back to the comfort zone of excuses. But if you persist, if you keep applying Jung's phrase even when it's difficult, you'll achieve something that few human beings do: total freedom over your own emotional experience.